name is C.J. Carter, and I'm the Kentucky State Director of Minorities for Medical Marijuana, where our mission is to provide technical assistance while developing resources in all aspects of the cannabis industry, and that includes educating and empowering individuals that have been adversely affected by poverty and social injustice.
What is D.I.C.E and what does it stand for?
So this event is called a D.I.C.E networking event, and what D.I.C.E actually stands for is Diversity and Cannabis Experience. So what our goal is with this networking event is to allow individuals who are like-minded to have a meeting of the minds in order to organize, in order to collaborate, in order to be proactive for what's to come here in the near future in terms of the legalization of cannabis here in Kentucky.
So it looks like we got some really good panelists here today. Could you name the panelists and just give a little short bio about who they are?
Okay, our first panelist, of course, is Representative Attica Scott. She's my actual legislator for my district. She's actually co-sponsored quite a few cannabis bills. We've actually worked hand in hand with each other here over the last 3 years as it relates to cannabis. We also have Mr. Glenn Sullivan. He's actually the Chancellor of Sullivan University, where they actually have a cannabis program, which is a short-term program, 9 months, 24 hours, for individuals in the medical profession, entrepreneurs, as well as, individuals, business professionals. We also have Mr. Mario Urrutia. He is actually a businessman who actually has quite a few cannabis business that he has set up, one of which is known as Ola Cannabis, which is a consulting firm where he consults large corporations all the way down to small farmers who are trying to grow hemp and also to grow and manufacture cannabis. And then we have Kungu, who is a policy advisor and lobbyist with the ACLU. So he works hand in hand with the legislators in terms of guiding them down a path where individuals, minorities, to actually get a footprint in the space.
Right. Mm-hmm. So this is a pretty big event we got going on here.
Yeah.
Tons of people are coming through. What's one thing you want everyone to go home with after this event today?
So the main thing that I would hope individuals take from this is an educational perspective that they can take, and something that is actually tangible in terms of the education that they receive. Because how it works is, you have it starts with the advocacy. Then from the advocacy affects the actual education, and that's where Mr. Sullivan comes in. Then the education actually affects the legislation, and the legislation in turn affects the business.
Right.
So that's how the panelist was actually formed, where we can cover those 4 facets of the actual cannabis space, so we can kind of take everyone down the line of how things work, starting with the advocacy, the education, the legislation, as well as the business.
All right. Thank you, CJ. It's
Appreciate
a great
you.
event.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Can you
on
please,
the spot.
Or you do the advocacy work. If you could just explain to the individuals what exactly it is that you do.
As he said, my name is Kungu Njuguna, and I'm a policy strategist with the ACLU of Kentucky. And what we do, as he says, is do the advocacy work. We work in the community to build up support so that we can go lobby legislators like Representative Scott to support legislation on various issues. Obviously, one of those is decriminalization of marijuana is one of the bills that we were trying to push that Representative Kulkarni had, a constitutional amendment. Haven't done a whole lot of work around HB 136, the medical marijuana, but we do support that. So that advocacy work is we also help to write the bills that are filed in Frankfurt. So like I said, that really just starts with talking to the people, finding out what they want, turning those wants into actual policy, turning that policy into bills, and then getting people to come and advocate for those bills.
All right, that's awesome, Mr. Kunga. So then from the advocacy work also moves to the education, and we have Mr. Glenn Sullivan. If you could introduce yourself and explain to the individuals here what it is that Sullivan University has to offer.
Okay, thank you, CJ. We, a year ago or so, about a year and a half ago, we started a Cannabis Certificate program, which is an entirely online program which is designed to help prepare people to work really in the retail side of the cannabis space, where we start with a kind of a whole sociology of cannabis course that gives people really a better historical perspective of what you're dealing with. We cover the legal aspects, the do's and don'ts, medical aspects such as we can, and things like that, and then the business aspects of how to work in a business. Because I felt that there was a need for this. Nobody was meeting this need, and it's way beyond Kentucky. This need. I mean, we're, as you all know, better than most. We're lagging, 37 other states and most others in a race to the bottom. I mean, we could talk forever about that. I'll try not to. So anyway, let me tell you a little bit about our program. I have too many things that I couldn't memorize. But we have students from 23 states in our first class, which was really encouraging. Right now, let's see, 110 students are in the program. 58 are from Kentucky. Let's see. We have 17 pending graduates. Okay, 62 are female, 46 are male, so there's your ratio, almost 60-40, 2 not specified. Racial breakdown, 1 American Indian or Alaskan Native, 2 Asian, 37 Black or African American, 14 race or ethnicity unknown, 6, 2 or more races, and 50 as white. So it's an interesting breakdown, and I'm really encouraged that we have a majority female group in there. I think that surprised a lot of our people in administration because, well, we really didn't have any preconceptions of who was going to enroll in the class, but it was just an interesting artifact. And it's encouraging, and I think most guys will admit that women can work really hard when they put their minds to it, and maybe harder, sometimes more effectively than guys. And here, this is a good example of a bunch of women who really want to get some things done. So I'm proud of them. But our program, is the only one like this in the state. I felt there was a need to get some education out there. Everybody's got stuff that they picked up on the streets, and that only takes you so far. So anyway, thank you.
Then we have Representative Attica Scott, and just so you guys know, this is actually my representative for my district. Myself and Attica has been on this journey with me. It's been about 3 years now when we first did our first event. And I tell you what, you guys need to find out who your legislators are. It's not that hard to contact your legislator, or we have some information on how you actually do that. I actually reached out to Attica, our Representative Scott. You have to be respectful when you talk to the legislators. Representative Scott, I reached out to her, and she gave me no qualms. She was like, sure, let's go ahead and do this. I'm there lockstep and key with you. Been going hard ever since. So Representative Scott, if you could introduce yourself and explain to the people what it is exactly that you do.
Certainly. So State Representative Attica Scott, I serve Kentucky House District 41. You're in District 41 right now. And I am a primary co-sponsor with Representative Nima Kulkarni on 2 pieces of legislation that I think are important to share today. So I'm going to share them. House Bill 224 would remove criminal and civil penalties for the personal possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana and not-for-profit personal transactions. The bill would also facilitate expungements because, listen, if we're going to legalize weed, we have to expunge. We have to decriminalize as well. And then it would also eliminate criminal penalties for the use, cultivation, and sale of small quantities of cannabis. And listen, we only call it cannabis because when Mexicans came to the United States in the early 1900s and started benefiting off of the sale of marijuana, white people decided that it was time to call it cannabis because that was a word that was much more acceptable to them, and it took away the power from people of color who were using the same thing that they were using at the same time. So that's why it also became a scheduled drug at the federal level that we now can't use at our leisure. House Bill 225 would place the question on the ballot to you all as voters of whether or not we could legalize marijuana. Y'all should be able to make that decision because Frankfurt's not going to make it. I'm just going to tell you that right now. So it needs to be taken to the people. So that's why I signed on to House Bill 225 so that you, the people, can vote on whether or not we legalize marijuana here in Kentucky. The third thing I want to tell you is that medical marijuana is moving through the legislature, House Bill 136. I voted on it in committee, voted on it on the House floor, and now it's stuck over in the Senate. So the Senate leadership, including the president of the Senate, have said that they would never hear medical marijuana. So I just want y'all to know, because that's where the decision lies. So that means that's who y'all have to be applying pressure to and calling and emailing and blowing up their phones and saying, we want medical marijuana. Because that's the only thing they're going to pass first, right? It's going to take a while before they decriminalize and fully legalize recreational.
So yeah, those two senators are Senator Stivers and Senator Williams, who are actually holding up the actual legislation. So if you guys want to contact them, that's Senator Stivers as well as Senator Williams. So next, Mr. Mario Urrutia actually played football at the University of Louisville and was actually drafted into the NFL. He's actually my business partner. If you could explain to the crowd exactly what it is that you do. Absolutely.
First, I was going to say we're at the same position we were 2 years ago when the bill got to the House, and COVID bailed them out the first time around. So you all's advocacy and your words will definitely help get it through the Senate, hopefully. So advocate as much as you can. Now, I started Ola Cannabis, which started out as a consulting company for the hemp plant, the cannabis plant, the hemp side, the hemp cultivation side of it, to where myself and my partners, we learned the bulk of our information about the cannabis plant. With that being said, I want all of you all to know hemp and marijuana are the same plant, the exact same plant. They just have different applications. You apply certain applications to produce higher THC content. You apply another application to produce higher CBD, CBG, CBN, CBC, all the acronyms, those contents. So cannabis is one plant. It's not two different plants. It's the exact same with two different applications. So as I'm addressing cannabis, just know I will say a cannabinoid if I'm talking about hemp, or I'll say THC if I'm talking about marijuana. All right. So we got started in the cannabis industry producing CBD, which was the first introduction of the plant to the state of Kentucky on a legal ramification, a legal matter. From that, we met a lot of farmers, we met a lot of processors, and we got a grasp on the supply chain of the cannabis plant and just the process that it goes through as a whole. In doing that, we were educated ourselves through those that have been doing it from generations to generations of growing not just soybeans and corn, but also the hemp plant, and educating ourselves since then. So with that, we've captured that data, we've gathered our resources, and now Ola Cannabis has gone from a consulting company to an actual genetics sourcing and farmer management entity. So we create the genetics that are best grown here in this region, from southern Illinois to northern West Virginia, Kentucky being smack dab in the middle, and taking the SOPs, the standard orders of practices from the farmers to produce some of the highest quality and the best product that we possibly can. So capturing that and putting it into a software form is our next phase. Our next order of business is buying into a software company that could help us retain that information and then go on and pass it and produce quality products to bigger Fortune 500 companies and car companies, end users that will use the product on a large scale. So that's my overall, long-winded response as to what we do at Ola Cannabis. But in short, if you have to remember anything, genetic sourcing, farmer management, and tech alliance.
All right, I want to start off with you, Mr. Kungu, with the first question. I know you do a lot of lobbying work. And in terms of cannabis, what exactly is the ACL doing, and what is it that made you want to be a leader in terms of leading the ACLU in terms of the lobby work that you do?
Well, one of our mission statement at the ACLU is we lead with racial justice is one of our biggest things. And to kind of lead off where Representative Scott talked about is you can't talk about, doing either medical cannabis and not talk about decriminalization. And here's what we know. On a national level, African Americans are over 3 times more likely to have arrests for marijuana than their white counterparts. In Kentucky, it's 10 times more. So it makes no sense whatsoever to legalize it or to regulate it for medical purposes and not do the criminal justice aspect of it. So that's kind of what leads the ACLU to do that work and what leads me to do that work. And what was the other part of your question?
No, just to see what it is that you actually do in terms of lobbying, because a lot of individuals don't know what lobbyists actually do.
What we do as lobbyists, I guess a typical day is one, we're in Frankfurt. We set up meetings with representatives, people who are pro and against a piece of legislation, and we talk to that legislator and try to get him or her to see our point of view. We typically bring people from their district to speak to them. We also have events, rallies. We use social media to get out the word, to get people to call people, to try to, quite frankly, pressure them to vote the way that we want them to vote. And so there's a lot of, sometimes you're making deals, quite frankly, here and there on legislation. But that's what lobbying is. So as you said, if we want to get this passed, HB 136 is sitting in the committees on committees in the Senate. The Senate leadership can call that, I think they could, quite frankly, suspend the rules and call it straight to the floor and vote on it. And that's probably what's going to need to happen because we're down to the last 5 days. 5 days. So if you want to look up, if you have friends in Senator Stiver's district or Senator Damon Thayer or any of the leadership, get them to call, write, email, and say, hey, your constituents care about this. We want to vote. Let's get it done. Because this is the second or third time it's gotten out of the House. It's time for Kentucky to do this. 37 other states have already decriminalized it or allow medical marijuana on some level. It's not new. We don't need to rewrite the wheel. You'll hear people say all types of things on the Senate floor or the House floor about why we don't need it or this and that. But obviously other states are doing it. Kentucky needs to finally do this. That's a good question.
The phone number? Oh, 18. Oh.
I got a card right up here that has all the information that you need. Yeah, the number is 502-564-8100. And if you go to legislator.my.gov, you simply just have to type in your address, and it will tell you who your representative is as well as who your senator is. Again, that's legislator.my.gov. And again, the number is 502-564-8100.
Share that with your family members. Share that with every single family member you have throughout the Commonwealth and have him or her call. It makes a difference. It makes a huge difference.
By a show of hands, who is familiar with Kentucky's historical relationship with the cannabis plant? By a show of hands. Okay. I say it's probably about 15 to 20% of the individuals here. Well, just so you guys know, at one point in time, Kentucky produced 90% of the nation's hemp. Once upon a time, in the 1800s, early 1900s. So, of course, Kentucky was not a plantation state, yet and still, that production was done on the back of slave labor. Producing hemp is a very laborious and very intensive and a very dirty job in terms of trying to produce hemp into the paper, in terms of the plastic, in terms of the protein. It's a very laborious process. Once upon a time in the 1800s and the early 1900s, Kentuckians actually referred to hemp as the nigger crop. That's what it was called. They called it the nigger crop. So there's no other state in the Union, in the United States, who has the relationship and who has the history associated with the cannabis plant. So if you guys can see the importance of us minorities actually contacting our legislators and letting them know of this historical perspective, because a lot of them, they just simply don't know. Of course, this is information that you can find anywhere. This is the information age. So a lot of the legislators I know, Representative or Senator Stivers actually was quoted that there's not enough research that he's received, but yet he hasn't seeked and he hasn't found. So it's as simple as that. So back to you, Kungu. What do you see and what is the future that you hope for in terms of cannabis legislation here in the state of Kentucky?
Complete legalization. I mean, that's what we're fighting for. We hope to work with Representative Kulkarni to pre-file her bills as soon as she can. I was just talking with someone about that. They're not going to get a vote this time, but we're going to keep pushing. That's what you got to do. And I think as Representative Scott can tell you, I know unfortunately it's very rare that a bill passes the first time around. So you got to keep fighting, keep educating the legislators about cannabis, and just keep fighting. And eventually we will do it. We did a poll just a couple months ago. Overwhelmingly across political, racial, gender, everybody supports this, 80% or above. The Kentuckians want this. Unfortunately, Kentucky is not a ballot initiative state, so we can't present it to the people. So the only way we can make our views known is that pressure I keep talking about. Come up to Frankfurt, be in the Capitol, hand out, talk to the legislators, harass them a little bit. That is the only way this will happen.
All right, to you, Mr. Sullivan. Now, cannabis is one of the fastest growing industries in the country. If you could walk us through your thought process of actually building the cannabis business program that is actually offered by Sullivan University.
Well, we wanted to present, something that was relatively short, because our advisory board said, people in general don't want to stick around for a degree on this. They want something pretty quick. So we were working on a certificate length program, and we looked around, and we hear talk about this 37 other states that are leading Kentucky right now. I mean, people, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas have all at least have medical. We can't even point fingers at them anymore. I mean, what's left? It's embarrassing. Where we got a state where, we have legislators whose eyes are covered up with the lobby money they're getting from pharmaceutical companies, from the liquor industry. And like Kungu said, the only way to address this is head-on research. The Israelis have, 20 or 30 years of research on this? There's tons of research. Archaeologists will tell you they can go back 8,000, 10,000 years of research on it. I think the homework's largely been done, It's educating the people in Frankfurt, not educating the people in Kentucky. We have people like Senator Stivers, Alvarado, and these other people who know about the poll results and have said, I understand the will of my constituents. I'm going to vote this other way. You need to vote me out of office. So, I shouldn't say more. But there's a need. There's a need for education in this, and an educated workforce gets the job done better for everybody. And this state's missing out on a tremendous tax opportunity, tremendous job building opportunity, business building opportunity. And it's not just going to happen in Jefferson County. That could happen in a lot of places in this state. We led the entire nation in hemp growing for 150 years. This is the one place in America you can grow it, for sure. We don't need special genetics. It works here. So that was kind of my thought process. It's time. I was trying to help Kentucky catch up, and at the same time, I knew I was swimming upstream here because the will of the legislature really goes against this. They're not supporting what we're doing. No state schools will be doing this. They have the agriculture programs, which they've had traditionally at UK and other schools, and they're great programs, and they're doing a lot in the ag world, but they're not allowed to do research because it's still Schedule I, and that's just strangling our country. It's strangling this state.
So we're on the precipice of setting up a new industry. And being that this new industry is actually being set up, one of the things that's actually going to be needed is an employee base. Where are the employees going to come from once this industry is up and running? Can you just explain the vision and the role that you see Sullivan playing in establishing a well-qualified and a well-educated employee base that's going to be needed to actually feed the industry?
Sure. In our program, our students study the supply chain that has to happen from, farm to table, so to speak. They learn the legal ins and outs. They learn about, not everybody knows how to work and play well with others. Some people don't know how to act when they're on the working side of a store. They've always been customers. They don't know about customer service. They don't know how to keep the books. They don't know how to close the store right. So we show, we cover all these things to help prepare somebody to go to work and be employable and be useful and be able to make their own way if they want to. And hopefully, this is what this state needs. It's not a lack of people's desire to be industrious. It's a lack of opportunity and the legal opportunity. And like these gentlemen were saying, if we don't lead by changing the rules with decriminalization and expungement, we can't go anywhere else. We got too many people wasting away their lives and talents locked up. And it destroys families and it destroys enterprise. I could
That
go
is
on.
so true in terms of destroying enterprise. On to you, Representative Scott. You are a legislator, so you're involved in the nitty-gritty of legislation. Can you explain or highlight some of the hang-ups that are causing the legislation to stall? And as Mario has stated, it's made it through the House in the past, and yet we are in the same place we were 2 years ago. What are some of the hang-ups that's stopping the cannabis legislation moving forward?
So part of what we're up against, we know, is institutional and systemic racism. Let's be honest about it, because when people think about legalizing marijuana and decriminalizing marijuana, they see our faces. So I'm just going to be honest with you on that. The other is we have legislators who feel like they're the moral authority, that we're in the buckle of the Bible Belt, and so they want to claim that their religion tells them that we shouldn't legalize marijuana, but yet they want to be the bourbon capital of the world, so make it make sense. It doesn't. So those are just some of the barriers that we're facing. But what we can do if we had the political will is we could decriminalize marijuana, right? We've got to expunge people's records. We could fully legalize recreational marijuana, and then this Commonwealth of Kentucky could make money off of taxing the industry. They are so ignorant that they don't even want us to make money off of the industry. It does not make any sense whatsoever.
So yeah, speaking on that, I was told that there is a voting block of 19 legislators who are ministers, who are pastors, who are extremely religious. Why is it, and how do we overcome that to individuals who still call the plant the devil's lettuce, or who still say that it's a gateway drug? How do we actually overcome that barrier? Because to me, that's one of the largest hang-ups is religious individuals. How do we kind of alter their perspective? How do we go about that?
So the best way when it comes to a politician to alter their perspective is to get them out of office, because those are people who are going to be bullheaded. They're not going to change their minds, so they have to be taken out of office. So to the point, I don't know, Kungu, if it was you or who said, if you know somebody in President Stivers' district, which is Clay County, then get in touch with them. You're going to have somebody run in those offices and get them out. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves stuck here for the next decade having the same conversation over and over again.
So as a legislator, what is your ultimate vision for the cannabis industry here in the state of Kentucky?
So we see it starting, right? We've got a program at Sullivan that's working, that's about to graduate, right? How many students? 17, did you say, about to graduate? Yeah, so I think 17 students are about to graduate. So we already have a program here that's working to prepare people for the industry. What we have to do, and my vision is that we are going to eventually fully legalize recreational marijuana. Hopefully medical will happen in the meantime, and there is still business and industry that will grow from medical. Somebody has to have the businesses to create these products that people are going to be purchasing when they go to the drugstore with their prescription from their doctor. So it's still going to be a generator for us economically, not as much as recreational, not as much as full legalization. It's not going to touch how much money the Commonwealth could make if we have full legalization. So my vision is eventually we're going to get there, but we got to get the ignorant people out of office. It's not going to happen out of benevolence.
That is so true. So I know in House Bill 136, there is no flour. Flour is not allowed. Everything has to be processed into the oil. In terms of the medical industry, if House Bill 136 does pass before April 14th, in your eyes, will the medical industry actually be successful since flour won't be allowed?
This is that piecemeal way of politics, right? Politics works in piecemeals, and they want to give you a little bit, right? Partly to shut you up, right? Maybe if we just do this much, if we just give them an oil, maybe they'll leave us alone and they'll stop at that. But we can't stop. We have got to keep going. We got to keep fighting to make sure that flour is included, and again, that full legalization is included, because we can't allow the legislature to think just a little bit is enough, because it's not.
Now that is so true, because I remember hearing Jason Nemeth say, and he said it proudly, that Kentucky is going to have the most restrictive medical marijuana program in the country. Now that to me is not something to be proud of in terms of being very restrictive. Now in the actual legislation, they just added PTSD, correct? So there's only 5 qualifying conditions. So you have to qualify. Luckily, I was diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy. So I actually qualify, but it's going to be a very small percentage of the actual citizenry who's actually going to be able to qualify for that. So we just simply can't, say this enough or highlight this enough, that we need to every individual in this room needs to contact their legislator. The legislators are supposed to work for the people. Let's use this as a case study to see if it's actually true. Do they actually work for us, or do they actually work for themselves in their own political interest? So we understand now that the legislation is actually going to fuel or lead and structure the actual business. Moving on to you, Mario. You are obviously a black man in the cannabis space. Yeah. And we know that you and I both know that the cannabis space is very cutthroat. Very cutthroat. If you're weak-minded, they're definitely going to take advantage of you. Can you highlight some of the qualities and some of the attributes that you see that are necessary for individuals who are minorities to actually enter this space? What are some of the things that they need to exhibit to make their business, whatever that may be, successful?
I think, as several of these individuals have mentioned, education is most important. Understanding what you're talking about, why you're advocating, and what direction that you want to go with your business, or just your lane in the industry, is most important overall. In addition to education, knowing your business structure, knowing what you want to do and what benefits that you give these individuals that are consuming your product. Understanding if there are heavy metals or pesticides in it, trying to alleviate that. Understanding how many grams of THC are needed or qualify for the ailments that you're trying to prevent or trying to help, to where you don't overdose or serve someone and give them a bad taste in their mouth. Just knowing the intricate details of why you're doing what you're doing, and for who you're doing what you're doing. For instance, the cannabis plant works best if it's a entourage effect. That means there's over 113 cannabinoids in the cannabis plant. THC, CBD are just 2 of those 113 that you may have heard of. So if you take CBC, it's good for sleep, or CBN is good for sleep. However, if you combine CBN and THC, then you get a much better sleep, a deeper sleep, for more of the severe ailments or illnesses. So understanding the combinations of which cannabinoids that you are going after and which entourage of those cannabinoids help your ailments is just one example of being educated as to what your reasoning is for entering the industry. If you're just going into the industry just to produce flower, and to smoke it and make it smokable for others, that's more than likely you're not going to be awarded, those few licenses, or that license to carry or to produce your own product. Obviously, you can't help if you do have epilepsy or certain ailments. It's just a matter of the doctor making that determining factor if you can smoke it or not. But in terms of business, having a direction, educating yourself about why and who you're trying to affect and approach is most important in my eyes.
So we know that here in the United States, 70% of all the cannabis businesses are actually small businesses. I understand that with the consulting firm Ola Cannabis started off as a small business, and you have aspirations of growing that small business into a larger business, a larger perhaps corporation. Can you speak on what it actually takes in terms of cannabis business growth? What are some of the things that are actually needed to grow a business in the cannabis space?
In the cannabis space, it's good to have experience. Our strategic play was to educate ourselves around the hemp plant and understanding the hemp side of the cannabis plant. From that, obviously, them being the same structural plant, we learned a lot about THC and how to produce it and why it's produced differently. So I'd say, you know, in terms of business, having some type of background or experience, whether it is you are producing products, you know, a tincture, an oil, soaps, bombs, you know, whatever it may be, whatever your goal is, giving more, educating yourself more on the benefits of THC specifically for those products, because it's more than just a consumable. It has so many more benefits that we don't address. We don't speak about. We speak on the flower aspect of it, and that's the stigma, unfortunately, of us passing the laws for the plant. So look into the other uses and see what the true benefits are of THC before you go out and you try to apply for a business license, because that would be most beneficial to you in trying to narrow down a lane that you want to approach. The second most important thing, I think, is the team. This industry is so big, it's so brand new, it's so wild, wild west, up in the air that, you know, if you don't have a team of individuals that can help delegate some of the energies and the duties that it will take that are required for you to become an official cannabis business, it will take a toll on you. And coming from football, obviously the numbers, there's over 1 million players, you know, in the state or in the industry that are on the college level, should I say, and only a handful of them, a couple of 100,000, a few thousand, it's not even 100,000 that actually make it. So you have to really want it whenever you're going through training camp and you hit that wall and you're like, you know what, I don't know if this is for me. You have to have something, a why, that gets you through that wall, that gets you to a more narrow, a level playing field to where you give yourself more of an opportunity. Because most individuals that hit that wall, they're going to turn around and abort quick. The cannabis industry is very similar. You know, there's players that have been doing it for the long haul. They've been doing it for a while. From over out west in Colorado, LA, they've been doing it for years. You put China and Ukraine into the situation, they've been doing it for centuries, decades, you know. So those countries have legs up already, and they're very informative. And of course, they form alliances here in the States to get a piece of the pie in each state that does legalize the plant. So the more that you are equipped with information, education, and your team of knowledge, the better chances that you give yourself. I don't know it all, but if I lean on my brother here, you know, I know that he can go and, you know, reach out to an Attica Scott, you know, a Glenn Sullivan. You know, you can reach out. I'm having a hard time pronouncing your name. Kungu. You reach out to Kungu for the lobbying. You know, you need each and every one of these individuals in order to start a business, you know, to get your foot in the door. So collaborating, making it a team effort, that's all I know. So it's most important that I've realized in the cannabis space just as much as it is in sport.
Yeah, and to camelback on what Mario just said, a proverb that I remember one of my mentors always telling me when I was younger, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together. That's one of the most important things that I've learned in this cannabis space, that if you want to succeed and you want to go far, you have to do it together. It's very tough and it's very hard on yourself if you do go alone. So another follow-up question, Mario. One of the major hurdles in terms of establishing a cannabis business and in terms of it being fully functional is banking. What are some of the experiences and some of the things that you've seen in terms of having a legitimate cannabis business, in terms of actually facing some of the banking issues?
So there's some issues that are in your control, some issues that are not. When we first started out into the industry, it was so brand new that banks would raise flags if you had the word cannabis anywhere in your name. Or if you're doing any type of transaction of businesses with cannabis. And we found out a hard way. We had, you know, at one point, $150,000 that was, you know, frozen in an account because our name was Ola Cannabis. And the banks, they can't give you a reason. It's just protocol as to, you know, what they have to do when it comes to a cannabis business. So understanding that and going through that process opened our eyes a lot, you know, as to how to pivot and how to, you know, reverse engineer or hustle backwards to figure out how we satisfy our clientele and our customer base, but also how we can start to generate dollars and funds and operate as a consulting company to assure that we don't cross those bridges again. Since then, it's been a little bit more loose, lax. The banking systems have established their own protocols around cannabis businesses. So we have not yet had those issues. However, COVID did slow us down, so we have not had as big transactions as back in those years. So that's still to be determined. But aside from that aspect of banking, it's just, again, it goes back to the education, understanding where you can make your money to start to establish your business. For us, we interviewed the farmers. We actually listened to them. A lot of them lost the farm, if you may, because they went and they brokered deals with some of these big corporations that contracted with them to off-take their product that they grew for that company. And just for that company to go bankrupt and the farmers left holding the bag, holding all the bills, and then eventually their farm folding because they couldn't afford those services. So understanding their woes of going through that process allowed us to step in and provide a solution. As a consulting company, we had already developed the offtakes with the processors and the end users. So dealing with the farmers, it was a natural fix. Okay, let's connect this dot with that dot, help them offload their product. They may not get as much as they intended to or that they contracted with the entity, but we can at least get them some type of money to where their farm will be saved. Their family legacy can be saved. And from that, taking notes, understanding where that went wrong, and trying to implement ourselves into those supply chain mechanisms or management opportunities, and being able to understand what the farmers' inputs were, what a fair price is, and what the market calls for. So it's really a lot of educating yourself that goes into determining how you can get around the red tape, because there's always going to be red tape, especially dealing with this plant and dealing with us. So understanding where that red tape is and walking between that line is just the definition of hustling, really. Being aware, and caring for, our clientele and our products.
All right, we're going to open this up for any questions from the audience. An hour goes by fast, but real quick, what is one thing that you want the actual audience to take away from this panel discussion? We'll start off with you, Kungu.
Take action. Put pressure on your legislators to do something.
Absolutely. I'll segue on that. Take action, put the pressure on, and then know your route. When I'm lining up against an opponent, I know what I'm going to run. He has no clue. So know your route when you're running your route, when you're trying to win.
Like they said, do your homework, know your representatives, speak with your representatives, don't be passive. That's it. We have to advocate for ourselves here. Yeah.
That's it. I would say get organized. In this room, y'all can get organized so that you know who's going to be making calls, who's going to be sending emails. But I would also say educate other people. Take what you learned tonight and make sure you educate 3 more people about this conversation so that they can take action as well. Because it's going to take a whole lot of us to move that state legislature. There are 138 people who serve in Frankfort from 120 counties across Kentucky. And it's going to take more than the people in this room to move them to do what we know is right. Legalizing, decriminalizing, and taxing marijuana.
Out of that 138, aren't 106 of them or 108 of them are Republican, right?
Yes.
I think that's the way that it is. So yeah, we're fighting an uphill battle. So we definitely want to open this up to any questions that anybody has for the panelists. I did see a couple of hands.
Yeah, my name's Farai. I also own a consulting business. My background is in food safety and food manufacturing. The question I have for you, Representative Attica Scott, is I've seen 2 or 3 bills that have come up the past few years, and none of them have a minority clause that I've seen in other states. It doesn't look like HB 136 will pass this year. How do we get to a point where we have a minority clause in the bills that are upcoming that are stipulating exactly how this will benefit our minority community?
Yeah, that's vital. We don't have any kind of social equity in House Bill 136, no kind of set aside for black folks or other people of color. So we have to make sure that we push for that. The sponsor of House Bill 36 is from Louisville. Like, there's no excuse for folks in this room not to be applying pressure to the bill sponsor who's right here in Louisville to say, when you file that bill again for 2023, make sure it includes social equity. Make sure it includes a set aside for black folks and other people of color, because it doesn't include that. So start applying that pressure now before the session ends.
And that's one of the goals that I have as a citizen lobbyist. One of the things that I do is I work hand in hand with the legislators. And of course, everything that I do comes out of my own pocket. But you know, that's a responsibility or the ability to respond that we all need to have when it comes to trying to introduce minority provisions into legislation. You had a question?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do have a question. My name is Savvy Shabazz. I'm president of All of Us Are Done, founder of Life Coach Each One Teach One Reentry Fellowship. One of my questions is, and has been for a while, because I work with a lot of individuals nationally in Illinois and California. What does it look like to get individuals like myself that are formerly incarcerated and directly impacted from marijuana? At one point, I had 7 marijuana charges. What does that look like to get individuals prepared to be entrepreneurs in the field of cannabis, to actually run and be prepared to be the entrepreneurs of what those services look like? What does that look like? Is that being spoken about? Are we still where we need to pass the bill?
So I'll speak from a legislative perspective, but I think that programmatically you could speak as well, President Sullivan. So from a legislative perspective, California and Illinois didn't get it right the first time at all. They had to go back and improve on their legislation because they left out some key elements, including in Illinois, the social equity piece was not in the first piece of the legislation that passed. So what we could do is support programs like at Sullivan, but make sure they're at our public colleges and universities. Sullivan's not one of those colleges and universities. It's not U of L, it's not UK, right? So we gotta make sure we have these kind of programs in our public colleges and universities so that people like you, Savvy, can go and get certified, right? Can go and get prepared to own these businesses and operate the businesses, because they're not gonna happen if you aren't certified. They're not gonna happen because you're gonna be looked at sideways first and foremost. And then I think Kungu could probably talk about, from a civil liberties perspective, how do we make sure we're doing things like expunging people's records so that your record isn't a barrier to you being able to open up a business, right? We've had legislation that the General Assembly refuses to pass around second chances. They refuse to pass second chance legislation. We got to make sure that that happens, because that's also a barrier to you being able to start a business and be able to be part of this industry that's going to be booming in Kentucky eventually.
And also on the back of the flyer here, there are some expungement sources that were introduced by Governor Beshear when he first came into office.
Yeah, and on that note, expungement, we're talking about that. Right now, there is Senate Bill 33, and there's still time for that to pass. There was a House committee sub that made it really good, that would make it really easy to expunge your records. So that's another bill that I would have people put pressure on. I was just texting with somebody here earlier trying to get that through. And that would address a lot of that social equity, making sure you can get your record clean, second chances, and not being left out of opportunities because of a criminal record.
Well, yeah, I would say that's the opportunity that we have in Kentucky, is to look at these other states and look at what they've done. Almost all of them have done this little stutter step thing where you go medical first, then you go recreational, and it ties the hands of law enforcement, it ties the hands of regulators. You miss out on extra tax income, you lose all your opportunity for tourism, and that's the thing we need to capitalize on in this state. Here we are within a day's drive of everybody east of the Mississippi, and we're right in the center of it. We can grow this stuff. We already have the Bourbon Trail. I would love to augment that with a cannabis trail. Oh my God. Let's just say, let's bring that on.
Yes, I don't have a question. I just had a statement. My name is Gary. I have Gary Lopes Premium Cigars here in Louisville, and I just want to commend you on the hard work that you all are doing, because it looks like you all might get this passed before we can get a smoking indoors policy passed here in Louisville to be able to open up cigar lounges here. So I want to commend you on your hard work. I want to take a page out of your playbook, man, and hopefully we can apply the pressure that we need to do to be able to open up cigar lounges here. Thank you.
We got time for a couple more questions.
How y'all doing? My question is to Kungu and Representative Scott. We've talked a lot about H. Bill 36, the one that would legalize medical marijuana. What's the other bill looking like? The one that would prohibit hemp-derived intoxicants. What's that looking like right now, please?
That's Senate Bill 170 that was filed by Senator Hornback, I believe. I don't believe it's had a whole lot of traction, so it's too late in the session for that to pass, I think, unless something crazy happens.
Right. I think that one's maybe on its way out. I know the Kentucky Hemp Association has been very involved, meeting with him and trying to work with him, and it really wasn't successful. But I think the will of the people is being a little more clearly seen. And people are asking why the Department of Agriculture has filed a bill that would quash agriculture in this state, that would kill the development of agriculture that's been successful in every other state.
So if any of you know people outside of Louisville in Kentucky, those are the folks you need to be talking to. Because most of us in Louisville are with you. We're already with you. It's the folks outside of Louisville who are elected officials that you got to convince to do the right thing.
Okay, are there any other questions from the audience? Any other questions? All right, so I do think that's perfect timing.
My name's Aaron Jordan. My question is to anybody who feels compelled. What are we doing in terms of culture shift when it comes to normalizing? How are we utilizing our arts, our music, our whatever all the arts are, right? How are we utilizing and leveraging that to normalize the conversation, but to also lead the impact, which will be the culture, and what the culture is going to become here in Kentucky? Thanks, CJ.
That's a great question. I'll take that. Coming from a sports background, that's kind of my goal. I got into the industry to help alleviate some of the ailments that I had from my post-career injury. I know I have friends that, they use it for, their creative minds that are entertainers. And, there are different uses and rhymes and reasons for indulging in the product. And I feel that the education piece and the legalization, the federal on a federal level, will come through the vehicles like us as athletes, entertainers, and those that are cultured, to your point. So educating our group, understanding, our approach and our purpose, I think is the most important. Making sure that it's not harmful and then it falls under the guidelines that, they set for some of the performance enhancement, type of drugs or, the true Schedule I drugs, that they test for on a regular basis. I think fitting the cannabis plant into, navigating around some of those legalities and magnifying some of the true benefits that we can get from injuries, post-injuries, creativity, just normal medicine, seeing it as a medicinal plant. I think that's a huge part in getting entertainers and sports advocates on board to support the plant and the bills, the passing of the bills.
Yeah, I think the answer is education. I mean, you got to fight ignorance with education. You have to simply calmly ask people what their stance is and say, why do you believe this or that? And then try to, probe a little gently. Confrontation doesn't work, I know that much, but, trying to get them to understand, well, where does your reasoning come from? Is it just like my mom, who was born in 1937, she's just always grown up with this prohibition. Like, she won't try CBD for anything. And that's a generational thing, and it's, education. You just got to keep pushing the facts.
The one thing I will add, Aaron, that I think people should know, the majority of Kentuckians support legalizing marijuana. The majority, right? That's not the issue. The issue is the politicians. So I want people to leave here knowing the majority of your neighbors support legalizing marijuana, particularly medical. It's the politicians who don't want to do it.
Can I ask a follow-up, TJ? I don't need a microphone. Attica, you just spoke about the legislation being the thing in the way. What can the layman person do? What should be like a first 1, 2, 3 steps? Is it advocacy? Is it getting out to the streets, to chilling, learning more? What would kind of be your advice for first steps?
So when you leave here this evening, or even before, if you have your phone, you can go to legislature.ky.gov right now and email the entire legislature and tell them to pass House Bill 136. It's almost there. It's so close. So that's one action you can take right now before you leave.
You can join the group that put this on. You can advocacy through the ACLU, through Savvy's group, through other people's groups that are here. Organize, like she said. Get together, know who's in this room, and organize, and then take action.
So a couple of closing remarks as we wrap this up to 8:01, so we do have to end this. Your network determines your net worth. I'm sure we've all heard that saying. Another saying we've all heard is a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So it was our goal as minorities for medical marijuana to provide a spark, to be a catalyst for individuals to develop a passion to continue to build in this industry. So how do you build something when you have no resources? It's one brick at a time. If you're able to do it one brick at a time and be able to be consistent, whatever it is that you do, whatever business ideas that you have, it will be successful if you are consistent and you continue to build one brick at a time. So with that, I want to thank our panelists for being here tonight. We do have you guys' email information. If you would like to join Minorities for Medical Marijuana, please be sure to go to M4MMUnited.org, and that's M4MMUnited.org to actually join the organization so we can continue to have events like this, and we can continue to grow and continue to collaborate and continue to build the industry into the shape and the fashion that we want it to be. But we can only do that by doing that together. So I thank you guys for showing up tonight. We want to look forward to our next event. We'll be sure to email you when we do have that. So again, thank you guys. You guys have a good one.
I woke up, got out my bed, it was a sunny day. Brush my teeth, clean my skin, cause I love my face. Ain't got time for all that stressing, I'm receiving all my blessings. About to love and hug myself, cause I got time today. Whatever happened yesterday, guess what, ain't worried about it.